All right. Are we ready? Okay, well, we're right at 4 o'clock, so why don't we get started? Welcome to the panel presentation, Relinquish, Recover, Restore. My name is Carolyn Sabin. I'm Executive Director at Families First Partnership, and this whole grant effort is through HHS grant called Plans of Safe Care, and 2 different communities were chosen as pilots for this project, and that was North Platte and Hastings. And so we welcome our panelists here and all of you who are in our audience. And the purpose of this panel is really to bring forth some truths about addiction and parenting, the local resources, both positive and negative, and then how our system for support could be improved. The panelists are parents who have experienced addiction and system involvement, and we are here to give them a voice and helping to improve this system. So in order for us to really understand the story here in Lincoln County, we're going to look at some of our statistics for Lincoln County and Nebraska, really. The first of these is that children who have gone in out-of-home care, and this is from 2000 to 2019. And so the blue line is representing the whole United States, and then the orange line is going to be Nebraska, and it's just kind of interesting how sometimes it deviates from the proportion or the line that we have for our national removals of children or the number of children in care. So you just wonder, is it policies that they had in Nebraska? Is it the approaches that are different here than they might have been in other areas of the nation? So here's one of those first slides that points out the statistics in Nebraska. This is a slide that is explaining the number of children and the ages of those children that were in state care. And so the total number is, this is all of Nebraska, 2,209. But the thing that really pointed some concern is how many children were removed that were under a year old. So that is something that we really felt like it was time to address through this grant because so many infants are removed from their parents. And here's another graph that explains the reason families or the children were removed, and the indicator on parental substance abuse was highest, even over, a 4-year time period. We went to some went to some local results with the Bridge of Hope, and in 2022, they had 276 intakes, but of those, 85 were children that had been in a drug-endangered environment. So really, we're looking at a third of children that are removed have been in a drug-impacted environment. And then as far as the Nebraska community map, and this is from 2018, but Lincoln County, they had 122 in state care, and what they do is they try to equalize this to kind of compensate for population, and so the 14 out of every 1,000 children is much higher than when they equate it with 1,000 children in other areas. So that is the reason our area has been spotlighted. So we will go ahead and here are the panelists, and we'll let them go ahead in their own words.
Dee, do you want to start?
I can start. Hi, my name is Deirdre Nicholson, and I am a foster parent from 2006 until 2018 who worked with many families who had children that were affected by drugs and alcohol. And I helped with several aspects. I've got a few children that were not able to reunify with their parents and we adopted. I've got a few that we guardianshipped. I've got a few that were reunified with families. And so that's where my experience lies, is working with the families that have had their children involved in the foster care system.
My name is Katie. I've had 2 kids in the system, 3 CPS cases. My older child was actually adopted out through the system, and my younger child lives with me.
My name is Jessica. I have 3 kids that I have an open CPS case with right now that will be closing soon, but through my drug addiction, that's how I've lost them, but that's it.
I'm Cassandra. I've had 2 twin girls adopted out, and I've had a son go through the system, and the father has gotten custody of him. But I've been through the system, and I actually grew up in the foster care system as well.
My name is Jennifer. I am a therapist, a substance use provider in North Platte, and I'm also a member of the Families First Partnership Board. And I think it would be safe to say that no one here is used to speaking into a microphone, first of all. Second of all, no one is used to really speaking in front of a crowd. And so it's a brave thing to be here just for that reason. But secondly, these gals have been through a lot, and they're on the other side, I think, of some really difficult circumstances. And so it's awesome that you're here today. And it's my hope that some of the things that you have to say will create some change within the system. I also think that it's maybe good to clarify that when we're speaking of CPS, we're talking about Nebraska Child Protective Services. And so sometimes that means that your children are in care with foster parents, and sometimes that means your children are in care with family members, and sometimes that means your children are adopted and you've relinquished parental rights. So we've come up with a series of questions for our panelists, and they're all free to share their story as they see fit. We've had a little bit of practice, but never in this scenario. So I will, if you're all comfortable, I'll go ahead with our first question.
Yeah.
Okay. The first question is, was there a time when you needed help but didn't ask?
When I relapsed in 2019, after I had had my daughter, it was a couple years after my son had already been adopted out through the system. I knew once I had relapsed that I needed some help. But I wasn't going to ask anybody that worked for DHHS because in my experience they had taken my kid and they hadn't given me the proper resources to get him back or helped me in the ways that I needed help at that time. So I had tried to do what I thought was best in that moment, and I found a family member to take her so I could get sober. And then CPS still ended up getting involved. But I was so traumatized from, I think, my first case with CPS that I just didn't even want to ask DHHS for help, even though, I mean, that's what they're there for, is to help in those situations.
So mainly you would say that you were fearful of the very resource that was supposed to help you to get sober and to keep your child.
Yeah.
I would say when CPS first got involved with me, it was based off of where I was living at, and they wanted me to find a new place to live. When I asked, where do I even start, it was, well, ask family, you didn't really get you can try the shelter, or you can try this, or you can try that. It was just, find somewhere else to live, we give you a week. So it was kind of overwhelming at first. And then they eventually stepped in, and my kids went and lived with my brother for a while. So, I mean, when you don't know where to go to get help, you don't know, it's overwhelming.
Yeah. overwhelming means that there was a lot of emotion involved
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah.
And when you're experiencing trauma or you're experiencing a lot of emotion, sometimes your decision-making skills don't quite kick in to think of, like, what am I going to do here?
Yeah.
And you're just terrified. And so it's hard to figure out, step by step how
Yeah.
I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I would say the same thing with the definitely ashamed would be one of the barriers that hold me back from asking for help as well, and the overwhelmness of it all. It's just
It's part of, like, what I was talking about today, like, it's super hard to admit your faults.
Yeah.
And you're admitting it, to a lot of people live today, and that's hard. But also, when you know you need help and you're not sure how to get it, and you're doing something that you're ashamed of, it's a big barrier when you're.
Yes, definitely. So it's just, I definitely should have asked for help and wanted to, but didn't know the right direction to go, and which ones to ask first, kind of thing. Yeah, just didn't know which direction to go first.
So what all of you are saying to me is that you knew you were in trouble. You knew that you were in a place where you, physically, emotionally, maybe where you shouldn't have been. But finding your way out of that was really, really difficult. Sometimes in addiction, the idea is that if you wanted help, you'd get it. And that's not what you're saying. That you wanted help, you just didn't know where to get it.
Yeah, they say you make life what it is, and if you want to change, you're going to change. But it's a whole lot easier said than done that way, because when you have burned so many bridges and ruined your life so much, really, to start over from the beginning is, like, impossible. Like, where do you begin trying to clean up your side of the street? And, like, there's a lot of work to it, for sure. And to have someone there for the support, to advocate for you helps out a lot, I think. But because doing it completely, going to somebody and just asking, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I do this? And then giving me the answers. Okay, cool. But then now what? Now I'm supposed to go do this by myself? Like, for example, right now, I don't even have the right words right now to say what I'm saying. So when I need to go clean up my side of the street, it's a little nerve-wracking and overwhelming when I don't know how to explain it sometimes for them to understand me.
You're doing a good job. Next question. Did you ever ask for help and not receive it?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
At one point, when my case with my son, so when that case first started, I had gone to treatment through going up to the 5th floor at the hospital, which had all been done for me. And when I came back from treatment, I had started IV drug using, which was a completely different addiction for me. And so I had asked my workers, I said, I gotta go to treatment. I need help. And nobody pointed me in what direction to go. Nobody told me about substance abuse evals. And I hadn't gotten myself into treatment the first time. The hospital did. So I had no idea how to do any of that. And they kind of ignored me. They kind of didn't tell me, like, this is how you do this. Okay, let's get you into this. It was, well, you're not following what you're supposed to do yet again. And then it spiraled, and it continued to spiral for the next 6 months or so until it came down to either relinquish your rights or have them terminated.
So you transitioned into a really frightening place in your addiction, and you knew that, and you were scared of it, and you definitely wanted help with it, and then just weren't maybe given the answers.
With me, I didn't ever ask because I didn't know where to go to receive, like, to ask. Who do I ask? Because my first run-in was just this is what you have to do, find another place to live, and I'll get a hold of you in a couple weeks, see if you did that. So it was kind of like, what? Like, where do I go from there? Who do I go ask for help, or who do I go and ask what I need to do next? So, I mean, some people don't know where to go when you've never been in trouble. So,
I would say for me, I didn't really ask because I thought I was in control and I didn't want it to be held against me to have to ask. I figured I was an adult, I had to figure it out on my own. There's many people who have, so I just thought I had to do it and figure it out somehow without asking, and then I did not know how to do that. So if I would have asked properly, I probably would have received some kind of help or a direction which way to go. But at the same time, be overwhelmed with how to ask the right questions for help. You can't figure that out during that time.
Next question. What do you feel the community is lacking?
I would say the biggest thing is advertising the programs that do help. If you've never been in trouble, you don't know what programs will help you. Just for me being in trouble, I have found the few sources that do help me. So I think if there was more word out or advertising of places that do help you, before you lose your kids, or to just get you treatment or whatever, I think that would change a lot.
I think the community is lacking an understanding of addiction and a little more empathy with it. I've seen that a lot at my job where people are coming down and so they go to the hospital and they're turned away like the first time or second time. And you don't have to agree with the choices that people are making, but if you work at the hospital, your job is to help them. Like, no matter if they put themselves in that situation or not, help them in whatever way that you can. And so I think the understanding part of addiction it's a hard thing to understand if you haven't been through it. But in my personal life, I have somebody who's very close to me who understands it, who hasn't been through it. I think if people tried more to understand it and not just see it as, well, you made that choice and that's on you, figure it out, that it's a disease and that it's not an easy thing to get out of, especially if you come from a background that you don't really have parents, or you don't have a very big family, or you don't have friends to begin with, or anything like that. It makes it really hard to pull yourself out of that. And if you've already had run-ins with CPS, like if you have kiddos and you've already had run-ins with CPS, like at that point you learn that, like, oh, they're not going to help me, they're going to judge me, and it's going to be even worse than it is now.
I would say more training in the ER, like with the nurses. When I had my son, pretty much human services was involved right away. It would have been nice to have like a nurse maybe come in and talk to me firsthand, like, and tell me, hey, there's a caseworker that's going to be coming in and talk to you, maybe, instead of just a caseworker coming in there and saying, hey, my name is so-and-so and I'm a caseworker from, no offense, my guard is going up right away automatically. So sometimes they get a little bit of I kind of already knew because I did let them know that I was using drugs when he was being born because I wanted them to be able to help him as best as they can. But at the same time, maybe even a nurse being in there when there's a caseworker and they're talking to you, just to feel like you have somebody on your side a little bit in a way. It's not even on your side, but just having someone stand by you. So maybe after they leave the room and you have questions, they can answer questions for you even. So I would say maybe that there would be in the hospitals with the nurses, because usually most of the time, once they're born, they know what they're if they tested positive or not. So those certain particular nurses could be prescribed to that person, possibly, So.
I'd like to interject that one of the things I think that we're lacking in our community is a good quality foster parents who understand addiction and who want to really work towards that reunification piece. I know that when I first started being a foster parent, I was going to save the world. I was going to put on my cape. I was going to swoop down. I was going to save every little baby in the universe, and the world would be a better place. And that is not what foster care is about. It took me years of fostering to learn that what foster care is about, and it is so much more than that. I think that having well-trained foster parents who understand that you have to come underneath a family to help, not just pull a child, you have to come underneath of that family. And to be available to that family, to mentor that family, and to be part of the inner workings of reunification, and not just on the other side of the fence, I'm the one who has the child and you're the one who doesn't. Because that doesn't help anybody, and it certainly doesn't help that child. If it ends up that a child can't be reunified, and if it ends up that a foster family is the choice that adopts a child, then you should already have had that relationship with that first family, with that birth family, that that child then doesn't have to choose to either be adopted by you or be in contact with their first family. That you should merge together and become a family. With the understanding of respect and safety for that child. And we don't have that right now. What we have is a foster care system that we have well-meaning people who are fostering, but really don't have the training or the know-how or the experience to work with parents that are suffering from addiction. And so I would like to see more training that goes into that foster care piece before a child is removed, and that helps support these moms and dads, that we have dads too, but especially these moms, that the foster moms that are taking care of these kids, we can share and we can help these moms and come along beside them and help them. We just don't have that piece right now in our foster care system. It's very separate. And I'd like to see that change.
Next question. How would you like to be spoken to by DHHS, law enforcement, judicial, or foster parents?
I would say give more grace, understanding. It's kind of hard to explain, but I know, like, after I've had my case, it seems like they're pretty judgmental, and so, like, now that I'm reunited with my son, sometimes I get worried about things that could cause them to come back into my life. Like, if I'm doing things the right way or the wrong way, like, letting your kid run around in a diaper, is that a bad thing? Or, but they might document, like, when you have a case, there's certain things that they write down that makes it seem like they're using it against you in court. Sometimes, I don't know. So it's just like now, sometimes I get worried about how I'm doing it. I took my son sledding recently, and he didn't have the proper boots on, but he had his shoes on, and he had 2 pairs of pants on and everything like that. But then I'm worried that this doesn't look right. Is there going to be somebody there that's going to call this in or something, But I was also looking out for his best interest for it as well. After so long, I'm like, okay, he wanted to stay longer, but I just knew that we didn't have the proper attire at the time. So we didn't stay as long. Still got to let him have some fun, but it's little things like that of maybe having more grace and understanding on how we take care of our children, and if we're doing the best we can, there's kind of thing.
So in a moment when you're trying to have fun with your child and you're trying to, you're sledding or you're out, and it's in the back of your mind and it's affecting your parenting, like, am I doing something wrong? Are they going to take this child again? Because it's traumatizing to lose them. It's really hard. It's really emotional. And I think sometimes that emotion either is not respected or ignored.
Yeah, I would say that, but it's also just nothing to do with the authority, DHHS. There's other parents that are like that will sit there and judge another parent on the way they are parenting their child, I feel like, as well. And that's what causes the phone call sometimes. sometimes the best way to potty train your kid is to let them run around naked. And is that okay to some people? Some people might not think like that. You know, if a caseworker shows up to your house and he's just running around naked and stuff, you know. It's all about the way you handle it and do it, though, as well. I know that. But sometimes I get worried, like, when my son runs outside when I'm outside and I don't see him at first and he has no shoes on and a jacket, are people documenting these things, you know? So I get a little over concerned, and I think I act out a little bit more with my son because of those reasons. But I would just like a little bit more grace. That's all.
I think the way they speak to you, like, we understand that we have a drug addiction, but we're still human. Yes, we made a huge mistake, but some people don't know how to ask for help. And you may tell them this is what you need to do, but they may not understand that. They don't know how to take the next step into their hands. They may need somebody to walk with them down that road on it, you know, like, we clearly know that we made a huge mistake in our life, but being talked down to doesn't help the situation any better.
I had said in one of our meetings that I felt like they just wanted to break people, because it does feel like that. I'm an addict, but that never affected my parenting. The visit workers that I had, like, they have to come to your house and work on you with your parenting skills and stuff. They told me repeatedly, I don't really know what to work with you on. You're a good parent. You know how to take care of her. You take care of her needs. You're just an addict, though. And with my case with my daughter, they were constantly bringing up my son, who I had relinquished and everything. And so I feel like that was so disrespectful and just unnecessary. Like, I know what's happened in the past, and just because my son was adopted out does not mean I can't be a parent, because I'm a really good parent to my daughter. I think so, at least. And you can make mistakes and still do better after them. It's a learning experience. And I feel like if you have had a kid who is adopted out in the system, the second you have another kid, they kind of just look at you like, oh, here we go again. You know, the same thing. She's just going to be an addict. She's not going to be able to take care of this kid. And that makes it even harder, especially if you don't have a support system already in place and they're talking to you like that. It just makes it way worse.
So what I'm hearing you say is that also in the midst of trying to maintain your sobriety and your recovery, it's feeling like every move you make is being judged, and either by other people in the park or by workers who are coming into your home, and you never quite know whether what you're doing is right or not. And so one of the things that was also mentioned, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, in a past meeting was about something similar to, I just lost it. It was like, you made me think of it, and now it's gone.
Oh.
I guess forget it. Anything else?
Maybe explain things in detail, step by step, sometimes the way they explain things.
Read my mind. That was exactly it.
Yes.
Like not knowing. Sometimes a fear of asking a question. Like,
Yeah.
why am I doing this? Why do I have to fill out this paper? Why do I have to do this or that? And it's not out of disrespect that you're asking those questions. You truly need to know, and you need things broken down for you. But also there was the idea that they were not being honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
That they knew you were using drugs, but kind of used it as they just baited you and said, you go fix this and try to figure it out, but took your kid anyway.
Yeah, the first time they talked to me with my son, they were like, hey, we just have some concerns. I was living with my mom at the time, and they're like, you don't have a job, because I didn't have a job at that time. And you don't have your own place and stuff, so you need to get a job in your own place. And I said, okay, but they didn't tell me from the get-go, like, hey, we are aware that there is some drug use going on, and we need to talk to you about that. And I feel like maybe I would have trusted them more, you know, talked to them more about the things that I needed and how to help me and everything. Because within a week after I had just gotten hired on at a job, they came and took my son. And they're like, well, you don't have an apartment. I said, I just got a job. I can't really pay for an apartment right this second, you know? So, and they're just not realistic. Like, who can get an apartment in a week if you don't have a job? Sometimes they set these goals and they say, you know, you need to get a substance abuse eval. But if it's set out 3 months, that sucks because you've got to have it by the next court date, which is a month from now. So they're not really realistic with some give and take on how long it takes, because it takes some people longer to do things than others. Like, a person who's never been to counseling before, it's going to take them a little bit longer to get into counseling and to find a counselor that they trust, because that's going to be important too if you really want to get something out of counseling during your case, as opposed to somebody who's been in counseling since they were 12. And so they don't really, I feel like they don't really take into consideration any of that.
And I think with the having more understanding on, because if they're a therapist, they probably feel like you should be able to trust them, but you got to understand that different people match with different people. Different therapists is matched differently with different addicts out there, you know. Sometimes you got to go through a few of them to figure it out. Like, my first therapist when I was a teenager, she said it took me probably a good year before I opened up to her. Then I had another therapist a couple years down the road, and the only way she could get through to me or to communicate to me was by writing things down. So we kind of communicated through a notebook, pretty much. It was the only way she could figure out how to get through to me a little bit more, because I was a little shut off too, but that was when I was a teenager as well. So you have more of an understanding of letting people try different therapists, but the person has to be honest with their caseworker or whoever, that I guess maybe letting them know that's an option. Would you like to try a different therapist if this isn't working out? Some people don't think that's an option. I think they think they have to stick with the one that they get assigned the first time. That's not really usually the case.
And one more point with them, like, not being upfront, like, is the answering questions. People don't understand, like, that they have a list that they have to check off, you know, to get through the case. We don't work for DHHS, you know. I don't know what the reason for that is. And at one point in my case, I had asked why they needed a budget, because I was paying my bills. Money was not a problem or anything. And my caseworker was like, I'll write you down as a refusal. I'm not refusing. I was just asking a question, you know, and they should be willing to answer those questions. Well, we need a budget because we need to know that you can sustain taking care of your child and paying for the needs that your child has and yourself. And so if they were able to explain some of that stuff a little bit more, like, that would probably take down a huge trust barrier. You know, if you were able to willing to answer questions about why people have to do the things that you're asking of them.
So almost addressing your concerns in the moment versus waiting until court or waiting until a team meeting. Like, if you're having a conversation, say, hey, I have concerns about this, as opposed to your face saying one thing and then later on hearing that they had a concern or that something you said was wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on that question? Next question. Where would you go, or how do you feel like you would reach out for support when you were not in trouble, like before all of this happened?
I would say probably asking for friends, or if there was more of like an app, because I can tell you, before getting in trouble, I would not have known where to go. I had no clue where to go or where to start. I've never been in trouble until I was 33 years old, and here I am, starting from finding places that do help me, and I know other people that are going through the same scenario as me. So I tell them what I know or where I've gotten my help from, but you don't just see that stuff out in the public. You don't come across it like that without really knowing people that's been in trouble that can tell you these things, or knowing the resources yourself, really.
I would say maybe if there was a number to call for you to be anonymous, to be able to ask for questions of resources. Because I know that when I was pregnant, I didn't want to show my face to whoever it was that I was asking for the help at the time, because I think I was more ashamed of myself than anything. So it was something to do within myself. So being able to be anonymous at first maybe might help, and then eventually once, if they do take that step after that, then they can go further. But sometimes to begin to get help, you got to be anonymous, I think, or something.
Because again, there's that fear of people knowing what you're doing. But all of you were saying that there was a moment, maybe in the midst of your addiction, that you knew you needed help and just didn't know how to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, without being in trouble, without repercussions or them taking your kids from you right away, you know. And there was nobody to even, not in a higher up position. I mean, you could talk to the people that you were using with, you know, that like, man, I got to get out of this. But there was nobody, like you couldn't talk to anybody in an official position, because especially if you've already had kids removed, you're like, because they're going to yank your kids right away. And then you're going to go through everything that you've already gone through. And do you know if you could go through it again? That's a really hard part of it, too, is knowing, like, man, I don't know if I can go through this again. You know, because the expectations change each time with what they're looking for, what they want from you. And it's different with every household and child and everything else. But it just depends on if you can meet those expectations.
This is a question we haven't talked about.
Great. Thank you.
But I think it's important to say, when you're out of trouble, who would you reach back to? Let's say when your case is closed, you're done with CPS, you're done with probation. Of the programs that you're in now, do you feel like you have a way to reach back if something's coming up?
Yeah, I would say families first, or when I got put on probation, I got placed at the shelter, so I know I could go there for directions on where, or my therapist. And I also worked the Arm in Arm program through Heartland, so I know, or Region 2, so I know places that I can go now, but I wouldn't have known this before.
I would say yes and no. I have some really good sober supports that I've established this time around, which I would definitely talk to them, but I also don't know if I would. I think I will always have this overwhelming fear that if I say that I cannot take care of my child, or if I say that I'm thinking about using, that somebody's going to take my kid. And I think, I don't know if that's a fear that will ever go away, to be honest.
I appreciate the honesty. The last question that we have is, and you've given the answer a little bit already here, but what programs did help you, and how did you find them?
Mine was really through probation first. They referred me over to Beacon of Hope for my IOP, and from IOP, my therapist referred me to Region 2 for the Arm in Arm program. That's how I pretty much got my foot in the door through them, is getting referred from one place to the other. So that's kind of how I have found all my help. And living at the shelter for a while, that's where I've kind of got most of my help from.
I would definitely say Deborah's legacy was a big part of my life, and then going in the Berean church has been programs that's helped people that I know that are there that I could talk to, people that will stand by my side and walk by me through it all. I mean, but it did take jail for me to get to this point, for me to really want to help myself. And it was up to me at the end of the day when I got out of jail if I wanted this or not. But definitely, Deborah's Legacy was a big program that's been a major help in my life, for sure.
Heartland really helped me with my second CPS case. I really wasn't too involved with Heartland during my first one, but as soon as my case started, they said, you got to get in, with a substance abuse counselor at Heartland and a regular counselor and stuff. And I would have never put myself in counseling on my own. And I felt like that was good to talk to somebody. Yeah, and I wouldn't have done that unless they would have told me to, so.
And this was touched on a bit before, but now that you've been through all of this, have you come across the idea that maybe there are programs that are still needed? Things that are still, that are lacking still?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There should be more recovery houses, I think, a detox place, maybe even. I mean, I know there's things further away, but I don't know how far away, but at the same time here, if they had more, more homes to be able to, put women in even, because Deborah's Legacy is the only women's program in this town.
Like higher levels of care, places where people can live and then grow from there.
Yeah, it's kind of like a treatment, but not like a halfway house maybe even, or just like a recovery house, kind of thing. I think that would, of course they got to do the things to stay in it and pass it and stuff like that, and I get, but definitely I think they need more resources of things to help out people with addiction here in this town. I mean, they got counseling and stuff like that, but usually in addiction, we're so far gone that we need structure. We need to learn how to live again, and to be put in a home where that is being shown would help out a lot of people who are struggling. I mean, and I lived on my own most of my life, and I figured out that I thought I knew how to do it all too, but I didn't realize how important a schedule is really, and how much that's helped me get my life back together a little bit more. I mean, I could do it without a schedule, I guess, but it's so much easier with the schedule. I don't know.
I think it's lacking something happening before removing children. So some kind of step to go in and say, hey, are you interested in getting sober? Because once they remove your children, it's very hard to stay sober after that, because now you don't have your kid in your care, and now you have a long list of things that you have to do for this case. So if they could go in with a step in between that, like hey, we see this is happening, and and do the CPS case, but without removing the children, unless it's unsafe for the children, of course. But if the children are being taken care of, just a step in between that, just saying, okay, we see this is happening and we need to start this stuff, or, the next step is to remove your children. Because once they're removed, I know I couldn't stay sober once my child was removed, and then like Dee was talking about with the foster parents and everything, the foster parents that my kid was placed with, my first kid, they wouldn't tell me anything about him, I never got pictures or anything, and then I didn't want to be sober then, because I'm like, I don't even get to see pictures of my kid, I'm not making any progress, nothing's happening, and then I kept using and made it harder and harder to get sober and to follow what they wanted me to do.
I would expand on that a little bit. I had an experience as a foster parent that made me a much better foster parent later. I had my children removed from me for allegations of abuse that were untrue, but they were still removed. And I was, and am, fairly intelligent. I don't have any addictions besides cookies, but I don't have any addictions. I am financially stable. I have a professional career. I'm an RN. I also currently am the director at CASA. I have a stable marriage, a good home. I have never had any abuse in my life. I was never I've had a really idyllic childhood and no problems at all. And my children were removed from my home. And I'd always said, rather arrogantly, that if my children were removed, I would do everything that they asked me to do by 5 p.m. These people that are doing drugs and these people that are doing, they're, they need to pull it together. Okay, boy, the good Lord looked at me and said, I'm going to have to humble you a little bit. My children were taken, and like I said, I'm mentally healthy, I have no problems. And my very plan that I could do was breathe. Just breathe. That's all I could focus on, was that next breath I was going to take, because I didn't know where my children were. They took them. They took them and they placed them somewhere with someone at some point. I didn't know when I would see them again. I wasn't allowed to know where they were, if they were being cared for properly, if they were being fed, if they were crying for me, if they understood. It was horrible. It was 5 days. And I can tell you that was the worst 5 days of my life. And I've been through some stuff. And that made me a so much better foster parent after that. Because then, when I had a child placed with me, the first thing I did was I said, I need that parent's phone number. And if you're not going to give it to me, I won't take the child. Because I would get a hold of them. Now, I wouldn't tell them I live at 123, where I'm at, but I would say, listen, my name is Dee, and I have Timmy. And he's okay. I want you to know he's okay. I want you to know he had his bath, he ate his spaghetti for supper, we've sat down, we've watched a little SpongeBob, he's doing okay, and then I would send a photo of that child saying he's here and he's okay, and I want you to get your child back. I want to help you get your child back. How can we do this together? So I was looked at as a source of support and not the enemy wanting to be the baby snatcher who stole their kid. And then we could go from there. We would start nighttime phone calls every night if the child was old enough. Mommy loves you. We would start, and I would help, and I would offer to facilitate to have visitations with that parent that were safe and oversaw. I would never would have done any of those things had that not happened to me, having my children removed. And it stunk. I thought, this is horrible. I mean, I've done nothing wrong, and I was completely exonerated, and my kids were returned to me after 5 days. But I can tell you, had I not experienced that, I wouldn't understand. I don't understand how anybody who had an addiction, who was dealing with poverty, was dealing with abuse, was dealing with being a single parent, was dealing with any of the host of things that these young ladies deal with, could work the program. There's no way as a healthy woman that I could have done it. It was horrible. It was horrible. So we need to come in, and the foster care system needs to change, that we partner with the moms so that foster moms and moms can work together, and that we can share these kids and help these parents through recovery, not withhold their children from them as punishment for being addicts, but to say, let's parent this together. Let's get this together. Let's get these kids home. Let's get these families back together healthy, so that we don't have another generation of children that are being born to more addicts, that we can help to heal these families. It's so important, and that's like polar opposite of when I started as a foster parent. I was shown such a gift in my pain, in my experience, that I'm really passionate about it now. And so now I'm not a foster parent anymore. My husband said we can't do that anymore, because he said he's moving to the camper if I bring any more kids home, because we're in our 50s and we have first graders. So, so I said, because we've adopted all the children that weren't able to be reunified, we've adopted them. We were a one-stop shop. But now I'm on the other side. Now I work with CASA, and I'm the voice for the kids. And the voice for the kids most of the time is they need more time with their parents. They need more visitation with their parents. They need holidays with their parents. These parents need to have a reason to wake up in the morning and say, you know what? I'm staying sober today. I'm staying sober today because I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Not, I don't know where my kid is. I haven't seen him in 3 months. That's not motivation to be sober. That's not motivation to be a good parent. We need to change that part. So that's all I can add to that piece.
Well, I thank you. I appreciate all of your comments and all of your participation. Our group is going to continue to meet and, take the information that we've gotten here and hopefully make some change, create some programming, or do something to just change the whole system. And so I did say at the beginning of this that we had some incredible people that were going to tell their story. And so now you get it.
I would like to say teamwork does make the dream work. To add into it, we need to become more of a team. So definitely teamwork makes the dream work.
Turn it on. Okay. Well, thank you to our panelists, and just a little bit of an update on what has gone on in the community. We do have a group that has been meeting probably since August, and it is our Plans of Safe Care Collaborative, and this is a group that includes a lot of those frontline workers that are really the guiding force behind getting programs in place for a lot of the young moms. And so it's included the health department, some young youth coaches, HHS. I mean, I think that we've all really decided this has to be something we work with and get taken care of together. It can't be just the HHS, or it can't be just Deborah's Legacy, or, you know, it has to be a group effort. And I think that this is something we can all pull together and do. Through that collaborative effort, we have identified different resources in the community, and those have been put into what they call a binder, and that binder is it'll end up being a notebook that they would have, that they'd carry to different providers, locations, you know, appointments. And the group has had a chance to review the binder, and we will probably do another review of it as there have been changes to the binder, and then make suggestions so that we can really make that an effective tool in our community. And so we thank you for your input. That is one of our next steps, and then Jen already explained we will probably keep meeting and then figure out ways that the work can carry on through young parents. So thank you very much for attending today. A big thanks to Mid-Plains Community College. They always donate the space to us here, and to RA Productions for doing our live stream. So thank you, everyone. And if you do have any questions that you would like to send to the participants here, then you can put those written questions in an email on the Families First Partnership website, and then they will, when they get together, we'll see about responding to those questions. Okay? All right, thank you.